cord to this computer. Okay, well, good evening, and I'm genuinely excited to read this Bhaktirasāmṛtasindhu with you. I've read it a few times, but I don't think I've read it for a good 10 years. And, you know, for me, this is my tradition, and so therefore I'm really going to the very core of my own heart, my own way of framing the world, my own aspirations. So I'm very excited just to go deeper with you all into the practices of bhakti, because of course it's a never-ending path. Literally, it's eternal. For the Vaishnava traditions, the relationship between the Atman and Bhagavan is eternal. It doesn't dissolve on liberation as it does in other traditions, such as Advaita Vedanta. But in the Vaishnava traditions, it's an eternal relationship. So what we're reading about here, in some ways, is eternal. But in some ways, it's not, for reasons that we'll explain when we get to probably about session 5 or 6. So I'm going to begin with an invocation. And you're all welcome to take a moment to just settle your vrittis, step out of the secular into the sacred. And the most excellent way of doing that is to bring your spiritual teachers to mind. Anyone that's helped you on your spiritual journey, bring that person to mind and do a namaha in gratitude. And if you have a disposition towards Ishvara, then bring whatever that presence is. And if you don't, I hope at the end of 6 sessions, you'll have a disposition. And even if you don't, at least you'll have a very clear sense of what those who do have a disposition, what they're talking about. And you might find it very, I think everybody finds it enchanting and attractive, but some just can't quite sign off on it. And that's all of these kinds of decisions, of course, are all samskaras. They're not coming from the Atman, except at a very free will sort of deep level. Anyway, start with our invocations. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminite Namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarine Vakanda Mandalakaram Yena Vyaptam Characharam Tat Padam Darshitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Sri Krishna Caitanya Prabhu Nityanandasya Dvaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute. Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hare Priya. Apavitra Pavitrova Sarvavastha Gato Viva Ya Smaret Pundarikaksham Sa Bhayabhyantara Shuchi. Okay, we'll have a 10-minute preamble, and then it'll just be a text for the rest of our time together, my friends, for these Svadhyaya sessions. We're reading the Bhakti Rasa Amrita Sindhu. So the Sindhu is an ocean, actually, the Indus River, actually, the Sindhu. The Sindh is a province in northwest India. So, but anyway, Sindhu gets to mean an ocean. So the Bhakti Rasa Amrita Sindhu, you got to work backwards to compound. The ocean, Bhakti Rasa Amrita, the ocean of the nectar of the rasa, the ecstatic experience of bhakti. So this is a 16th century text written by probably the foremost, along with his nephew Jiva. It's written by Rūpa Gosvāmi, one of the senior most follower of Caitanya, Sri Caitanya Mahāprabhu, who was just an amazing he spearheaded a renaissance of Krishna Bhakti in the north of the subcontinent, from Bangladesh to today, right across to Delhi, and even a little bit down south, but certainly on the north, across the north of the subcontinent. His name was Caitanya, and of course, in his tradition, the Gauḍīya tradition, he's considered to be actually an incarnation of Krishna. And in other Vaishnava traditions that are not Gauḍīya, he's considered to be the topmost bhakta. He's attained the highest state of bhakti, the highest state of bhav, of love of God that is attainable. So Caitanya never wrote anything. He wrote 8 verses, and we'll read those. Remind me when we get to the end of the workshop to read the Shikshashtakam, the Ashtaka, like the Ashtanga, the Shiksha Ashtaka, the 8 verses of instruction. But his disciples, specifically Rūpa, the author of our text, they wrote just voluminous, just incredible. There are certain intellectual virtuosi in ancient India, maybe a couple of dozen that really stand out, that just their knowledge is encyclopedic, and they're the theologians for their particular tradition. They would be comparable to an Augustine or an Aquinas in Christianity, right? So in Christianity, if you really hit the main figureheads, probably have Origen, and the early church father, and then you would have Augustine and you'd have Aquinas, and they'd be your kind of big hitter, your big gun theologians that really establish the theology for the Catholic Church. So in India, you have the different lineages have these equivalents. So in the Gauḍīya lineage, which really becomes prominent in the 16th century, Caitanya instructed his disciples, and one of them, Rūpa Gosvāmi, wrote this Bhaktirasāmṛtasindhu, which we're going to study, about the processes of bhakti and about the states. Something like Patanjali's samadhi states. Right? Patanjali has these 7 states, right? He's got these savitarka, nirvitarka, savichara, nirvichara, asmita, ananda, and he's got nirbija. So if you put that together, 7 states. So not like that, but some kind of bhakti parallel to that. We'll be looking at some of those states of love of God, not states of the chitta. The sabija are all states of chitta, and nirbija is a svarupa vastanam state of consciousness absorbed in its own nature. No, these are states of love for another, the supreme, for a Bhagavan that's distinct and other, right? This is a monotheistic dualist. They wouldn't call themselves dualists, but to start with, we might, just until we refine those terms a little bit better. So the Bhaktirasāmṛtasindhu then becomes the canonical text, the sort of go-to text, just like Patanjali does, become the go-to text for yogic practice, for psychology, Hindu, if you think of Hindu psychology, right, because most of it's about samskaras and chitta. There's not much you can say about nirbija. What are you going to say? What are you going to say about nirbija? You know, Tada Svarupe Vastanam, that's it, right? And then a bit later on in chapter 2, he says, well, what's the siya? Well, Shuddhi Matra, Prataya Anupasya. Well, the siya is pure, but he's absorbed in the vrittis, and that's all you're going to say about it. What else are you going to say? Whereas with bhakti, there's a lot you can say, and this text will say a good deal of it. So it's a 16th century text. It's a bhakti text. Let's just quickly connect it to the text that we're more familiar with in the yoga community in the West. De facto, there are really 2 texts that have become canonical, even though I know most of you don't think of it that way. If you pause for a minute, you might see you might agree that the texts that have become canonical are the Yoga Sutras and the Bhagavad Gita. Now, obviously, no one is signing off and saying, well, I've become a Hindu, or there's no sort of formal baptism or kind of a rite of initiation. I get all that. But they function as the equivalent of the canonical text for Western transplanted postural yoga. Along with the postural yoga, the gurus who brought that, Guruji Iyengar with the Yoga Sutras and many of the other big gurus with the Gita, they have become the equivalent of a sort of a Bible in Christianity and the Quran in Islam, even though yogis are not going to think that suddenly they've changed religion or something, but those are your canonical texts. When you do svadhyaya, what are you svadhyayaing on? Other than, or you might svadhyaya the books of your teacher, but other than that, in terms of the texts that are accepted by all Hindus, it's a Yoga Sutra and the Gita. So let's quickly connect what we're doing with that. Patanjali has a very, very minimalistic little few verses related to Ishvara Pranidhana. Just a word, and then, in the first chapter, Ishvara Pranidhana, you can attain Samadhi. Ishvara Pranidhana. You can fix your mind on Ishvara. Remember, Patanjali's yoga is Chittavritti Nirodha. It's not Bhakti. It's Chittavritti Nirodha. You're going to Nirodha everything, including any Bhakti-esque states of mind. You have to Nirodha Klishta and Aklishta, all the vrittis, whether of any type. So what's the function of Ishvara? We have the word pranidhana, which does mean to surrender. And the primary commentator, Vyas, does say, look, this is a kind of bhakti. It's a kind of bhakti vishesha, he says. It's a special kind of bhakti. And later theologians are going to say it's not pure bhakti, for reasons we'll get to. But for now, let's just give Patanjali his moment in the bhakti light, in the sun. So, and he quickly says a few words about bhakti. He says, well, this Ishvara he's a special soul, Purusha Vishesha, and he's never been a karma klesha, samaya anavichinnaha, never been affected by avidya, so never been in samsara like us. So right there, a lot of nonsense is written about Ishvara, and it's really quite remarkable, including by academic scholars who should know a lot better. Trying to say that Ishvara is some kind of a yogi, a paradigmatic. No, he's not. He's never been affected by the kleshas and karma. So he's a transcendent being. Even the 20 words, from the 20 words that Patanjali does disclose, he's clearly not some yogi some paradigmatic yogi. And, there was an MA thesis written about this, establishing what the word Ishvara means in Indian philosophy. Clearly, it means the creator God. And then, but the second part of the thesis was very interesting, because it was, why do people try to wiggle out of that? That's not a philological problem. That's a psychological problem. There's an aversion to God, my friends. Being a theist is sort of not cool for some bizarre, strange, cultural, momentary reason. It's not cool to be a theist, right? So I'm generalizing, but in New Agey kind of circles, in the kind of what we might call New Age, being a theist is not particularly cool. And obviously, so many exceptions to that rather sweeping claim. So people try to wriggle out of what Ishvara is in Patanjali's God. Okay, Krishna says in there, this is the Ishvara of Shiva in the Shvetashvatara Upanishad, Krishna in the Gita. Ishvara means creator God. That's what it means in Indian philosophy. So Patanjali just says, look, he's omniscient. He's the guru of the ancients, Guru Purvesham, because he's never affected by time, and so on. And then, now, what's the function of Ishvara in Patanjali? The whole purpose of Patanjali is to Chittavritti Nirodha. So you have to Chittavritti Nirodha on something. If you're going to Nirodha the mind, it has to be Nirodha on something. The mind doesn't. And if something's going to rest, it has to rest on something. Look, this mask, it doesn't float. It has to rest on something more solid than itself. So therefore, the mind, so then Patanjali says, look, you can rest the mind on Ishvara. How do you do that? Tasya vachika pranava tajapa tadartha bhavanam. That Ishvara comes in the sound Om, and you just fix your mind. You nirodha your mind on the sound Om. So that is a kind of bhakti. But the goal isn't love, not talk of love. No, and the goal isn't even Ishvara, like the qualities of Ishvara. We know nothing about the qualities of Ishvara, the form of Ishvara, or the leelas of Ishvara, nothing. So it's kind of a functional relationship. You fix the mind on Ishvara, and later on in chapter 2, Patanjali said, Samadhi siddhir Ishvara pranidhana. Ishvara can give you that samadhi, which is the goal of yoga. So you could call it bhakti, but it's the goal of it isn't love of God, which is what we're going to be interested in this workshop. The goal is you fix your mind on Ishvara because Ishvara can give you samadhi. Well, thank you, Ishvara. And what is samadhi? Svarupa Vastanam, absorbed in your own nature. Nothing to do with God. What about God's nature? Where's this Ishvara? He's an eternal being. He's transcendent. Patanjali gives us no information about the ontological status. Ontological mean, like his ultimate existence. Where is it? Where does he? If he's not affected by the kleshas and karma, well, where does he exist? None of that information. He simply says, fix your mind on japa, and then Ishvara will give you samadhi. So that's, if you want to call that bhakti, my friends, that is so minimalistically bhakti. The bar is so low, you'd have to bury it underground practically. It's not even above ground. But we can call that, but we'll honor the commentators. Vyas does say, the great Vyas, great commentator, author of the Mahabharata, primary commentator on the Yoga Sutras, he does say, it's a bhakti vishesha. So we'll go with that. Now, Gita, much more robust bhakti, much more forceful bhakti. In fact, really, if you study the Gita, I know people have their different takes, but for me, it's clear, and the Vaishnava tradition is clear, that what's happening in the Gita is that the bhakti is being established as the highest yoga system. There's no question. Maybe someday we'll do a Gita workshop, and there's numerous verses where Gita sort of is prioritizing bhakti. So bhakti to me, I'm the highest Ishvara, Bhutanam Ishvaro Pisam Prakritim Swamadhishtaya Sambhavami. Over and over again, I am the Ishvara. You surrender to me. Samanmana bhava madbhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru. Just fix your mind on me. Do everything for me. Offer everything to me. Don't worry. I will free you from all reaction. So we get a very, very strong bhakti in the Gita, but we don't get any details about, well, how do you do bhakti? Okay, you fix your mind on God. That's what it says, fix your mind on me. How do you fix your mind on God? What does that mean? What does that mean, fix your mind on God? I can't even fix my mind on my own Atman. How am I going to fix my mind on a Parama Atman? The Atman is beyond the mind, can only fix itself upon sanskaric things of the world. We can fix our minds on the things of the mind is an instrument, and instruments are designed to function in a very specific way. So the mind is the instrument that takes in all the imprints that flowing in through the senses and organizes them, recognizes them, and records them. And then maybe, it puts them together later on, perhaps in fantasy or daydream or conceptual thought, even abstract thought. But it can only produce what's in it. So the mind can only produce images of things for which it has a samskara. And it doesn't have a samskara for the Atman because the Atman's too subtle to leave a imprint. It's subtler than the mind. So the mind can think theoretically that there's an Atman. That's what Jnana Yoga is. You theoretically say, okay, I'm Atman, right, Tattvamasi, you are too, Aham Brahmasmi. You can be like the Jnanis walking around all day, Aham Brahmasmi, and you can repeat that, right? And that's fine. That's a part of jnana, and that does, make the mind sattvic and does lead to liberation. But your mind can't know it. Remember the Upanishads, my friends, that we did some time ago. The mind can't grasp it. Remember all those verses. The senses don't go there. Sight doesn't see it. Mind can't grasp it. What else can you say about it other than the beautiful Upanishads? What else can you say about it other than it is? So the Gita doesn't really, it tells us much more robustly, much more forcefully than Patanjali, that the goal is to fix our minds on Bhagavan. And Krishna, and we have a personality associated with that title of Ishvara. Krishna very, very forcefully says, I am Ishvara, I'm the support of Brahman. Brahman rests on me. The whole of everything rests on me. If you read the Gita, you can't, verse after verse after verse. Doesn't tell us much about this. One little verse where he says, Satatam kirtayanto mam yatantas chadridha vrataha namasyantas tamam nityam something, aha. There you go, aha, at the end. So he says, the bhaktas are always doing kirtan. He does say that. So we get one little, satatam kirtayanto. They're doing kirtan. So, so that's a bit of an exception. And then the next verse, he says, patram pushpam palam toyam, offer me anything, a fruit, a flower, water. So we get a little tiny little bit of what an actual life based on bhakti looks like. Other than the rest of it is just theoretical. Fix your mind on me, fix your mind on me, fix your mind on me. Well, fine, do your duty. And then, offer the fruits. Okay, but it's all a little bit abstract. It's all a little bit sort of formal and not very vivid. So then, so that's the Gita. So now we're going to look at this explosion, as I said, of this Krishna bhakti in the 16th century, which becomes very, very vivid in terms of what the practices of bhakti look like. And that's our Bhaktirasāmṛtasindhu. And let's, without further ado, jump into it. It's going to be Krishna-centric, but many of these practices are pan-bhakti. Some of them are a little bit specific to Krishna, and Shiva has his specific little things, that the goddess, the Devi, has her specific little things. Maybe there's certain flowers you offer Devi, Krishna, you offer Tulsi that you don't offer anybody else. Krishna bhaktas, they wear Tulsi around their neck. There are little things like that. But the basic practices of bhakti are pan-Indian. So we're going deep into one tradition just because why not? And it happens to be my tradition. So what's the point in having a teacher teach someone else's tradition? You want to catch any subject. You want to catch a teacher that's really into that for whom that subject, whether it's physics or quantum mechanics or whatever it is, you want a teacher that's excited about it, that for whom it's really meaningful. So Bhaktirasāmṛtasindhu, then Caitanya, explosion of bhakti. By the way, we got a course going on in Rutgers, just started 2 weeks ago, on Caitanya. We're reading the whole story of Caitanya, the hagiography, which is the term we use for saints instead of biography. Because when there's miracles and stuff involved, historians don't like to think of that as historical. So instead of calling it a biography, in the study of religion, they call it a hagiography, just to indicate that, that it's historical and biographical, but it's got these other what Jesus, the New Testament will be hagiography. As soon as you got walking on water or changing wine into water into wine, then it becomes hagiography. Rising from the dead. So when there's miraculous events, then that's just a term that scholars of religion use. So we're reading the entire Caitanya Charitamrita, and you're welcome to join us if you want live, or it's all uploaded onto the website if you're interested in the life of this amazing personality, Caitanya. So what we're going to do then is look at one of the main texts written by his disciple, Rūpa Gosvāmi, great, the primary theologian of the Krishna tradition, certainly of the Gauḍīya, of the Gauḍīya tradition. All right, Bhaktirasāmṛtasindhu. And let's go right in. So it's an ocean, and so the ocean's divided into quadrants. Right? Doesn't a navy divide the ocean in various ways when they must do, right? So to figure out where they are, where the boats are. So there's an eastern quadrant. There's 4 quadrants, eastern, western. We're only going to do the eastern. That's where bhakti is. The rest of it gets very, very specific about the relationships of Krishna's qualities, his forms, his interactions with his devotees. It gets very specific, and I hope you'll all read it. I hope you'll all be inspired to read it, and if you want to read the rest of it, it's quite an expensive book, actually, big fat thing. But I had the whole thing scanned. I'm not sure if that's quite fair, but if you're serious, then David Haberman translated it. He is a doctor in his own right, also a scholar at the University of Indiana. So 4 quadrants, and each has several waves. So I'm not sure if it's 4 waves in each quadrant. I think some quadrants have more waves, but don't hold me to that. So the first wave, the general characteristics of devotion. Okay, excellent footnotes here. You've got the text. So do take advantage of the footnotes if you're studying this alone. Glory be to the moon. And of course, this is taken as a reference to Krishna, who is often described the beauty of God as like the moon, especially in his relationship with the gopis, which takes place at night with the full moon in the 10th book, chapter 29. And also there are two warrior dynasties in ancient India, the lunar and the solar, and Ram comes in the solar and Krishna in the lunar. So that's another connection with the moon. Glory to the moon, whose form is the essence of all rasas. So there's a play on words here, because I think, isn't it also in the Western traditions that somehow the moon is something to do with the taste of vegetables? What do they say about the moon in the West? Isn't it something to do with the growth of vegetables, or something to do with the tides and the moon? I don't know. But anyway, rasa originally comes, it means sort of liquid. Because in Hindu gastronomy and also Sankhya metaphysics, actually, the quality of taste is associated with water. So if something has no fluid in it, it has no taste, like dried bread. So rasa originally means taste and flavor. But all words get appropriated by theologians and they give them new meanings, right? Because you're presenting a theology that hasn't really been systematized, like Patanjali. He's taken all these words, vitarka, vichara, ananda, asmita. Even in the sutras themselves, vitarka is used in two different ways. It's a vitarka bandhane pratipaksha bhavanam. What do you do when negative thought? So it's used in chapter 2 as a negative thought, but in chapter 1 as a state of samadhi. Vichara likewise. Vichara means philosophy elsewhere. And so sometimes you make up a word, but more often than not, you take an existing word which has some sort of connection to where you're going to take it, and you apply new theological meanings. So rasa, which originally means taste, actually means the taste of bhakti in the sense of ecstasy, the ecstatic experience of love of God, which we'll find out the bhaktas dwarfs the ananda of the Atman. Those who follow the Patanjalian method, right, svarupe vastanam, they seek their own svarupa. Patanjali doesn't say anything about ananda, but the Vedantins do. And they'll say, if you discover your own nature, you'll experience ananda, right? We've all heard Satchidananda. We've all heard that, Satchidananda, that the Atman is eternal. It's always in an ongoing state. Chit, its very nature, it has the quality of consciousness. That's its quality. Everything has a quality. If it exists, it has a quality. Otherwise, how do you know it exists? Something exists if it's recognizable. How's it recognizable? It must have a quality. So what's the quality of the Atman? Consciousness itself. The very fact that we're conscious is the indicator, the linga, right? You've heard of the Shiva linga. This is linga and the linga also. The Shiva linga is the sign of Shiva. So the linga of the Atman, the sign of the Atman, is consciousness itself. Consciousness cannot be connected to any known material substance. Sankhya, we know they have the earth, water, fire, air, ether, or you could plug in, I don't know, matter, gases, forces. You could plug in some modern sort of equivalent language, but consciousness cannot be tied into any of that. Not gravitational force, not neurons, not muons and gluons, nothing. You cannot, you might believe you will one day find some, neurological correlate of consciousness. If you're a materialist, you believe that. That's just your faith position. That's just your faith position, my friends. And the yogis will say you'll never succeed, because consciousness is a different thing from all known material qualities and forces and substances. And therefore it requires a different kind of substance. So you call it whatever you want to call it. Call it a soul, call it a Atman, call it a Purusha, but it's not material. As long as you accept that, call it anything you want. Call it Amagama, call it abracadabra, right? What does it matter? The point is, it's not material. So rasa then is the ecstasy that comes from the love of God, which eclipses, my friends, the ananda of the Atman. And we have many stories of great jñānis who started off as jñāni. A jñāni is someone who seeks the Atman. A jñāni and a yogi and are those who seek the Atman. Bhakta, when you use the word bhakta or bhakti yoga, you're seeking Bhagavan or Bhagavati if it's a goddess tradition. But if you just use the word jñāna or yoga or dhyana, I mean yoga, Patanjali, it tells you right in the beginning. Chittavritti and then what happens? Tadakim bhavati, then what happens? Svarupa vastanam, you experience your own, your Atman, Sva, you're the Rūpa, the nature of the Sva, of your own deep level self. Doctors pick that up on the way, sure. Like you get, if you get your PhD, you pick up an MA on the way. But what's an MA if you're heading for a PhD? If you've got a PhD, do you go around waving your MA certificate about? I don't think so. You've got a PhD. Everybody knows you got your MA. So the bhaktas pick up their Atman on the way. It's not that they say there's no Atman. Of course they do. They just don't stop. They don't get off the train there, my friends. They keep going. Why? Well, one of the reasons, they just fall in love with God. But as a result of that, they experience rasa, bliss. It's just, and they're so blissful that the idea of going back in a svarupa vastanam and going back to absorption in the Atman is boring. It's like, wake me up. Boring. Svarupa. Satchidananda becomes absolutely, we'll see, Rupa says, it's like the water in the hoof print of a calf compared to the ocean. Whatever ananda exists in the Atman that the jñānis and the yogis seek, it's like the water in the hoof print of a calf. Why? Because the Atman is a spark of Bhagavan. So Bhagavan's everything. So therefore, the spark of how much luminosity and heat is there in the spark as compared to the sun? It's a nice analogy. So the essence of rasa, ecstasy. So this moon, it's a nice poetic beginning, who has surpassed the string of stars with its brilliance. And then, probably the stars meaning, who knows, other yoga processes, whatever it is, with its brilliance, enhance the charm of the night, and is the companion of the constellation Radha. Notice the play on words, right? You just read it as the moon with the brilliance, But you see, this is a philosophical text. But my friends, there are poetic texts that we have not even come to the West, that we have no idea about. I myself haven't really studied them, and I hope to really immerse my mind in the kavya, shastra, the literary traditions, those, especially those surrounding bhakti, where just like a kirtan person that tries to sing an exquisite kirtan for beloved Bhagavan, and a theologian tries to write really, really powerful, systematic theologies for Bhagavan, well, there's writers that try to write the most exquisite prose in service of their Bhagavan. And the 10th book of the Bhagavata Purana is completely replete with this highest level of literary, it's called Kavya Shastra, poetic literature. So, and one of the things you do is a double meaning. So you read it, it says the moon, and the moon, from the moon, at least in Indian gastronomy, the vegetables get their taste, so the rasa, and the moon surpasses the stars. And the constellation, this is one of the constellations of the, 27 constellations, right? We have the 12 zodiac, they have 27. But the double meaning, the hidden meaning is Krishna, whose form is pure ecstasy, who surpasses all beings. And in the night, he plays his flute, and he calls the gopis, such as Radha, to come and engage in love with him in the forest. So there's a double entendre, but let's not, I just want to alert you to that the 10th book of the Bhagavata, which is where the story of Krishna is to be found in Indian literature, right? You want the story of Rama, you go to the Ramayana. You want the story of Shiva, you go to the Shiva Purana, Skanda Purana. You want the story of the goddess, and you got the Kali, you got the Devi Bhagavata Purana, you got the Devi Mahatmya. Well, where do you go for the story of Krishna? Not the Mahabharata. I mean, he's there, but it's not really his story. It's really the story of the Pandavas. You go to the 10th book of the Bhagavata Purana, my friends. So there, okay, so that is written in exquisite, not philosophical, not like sutras. Oh my, sutras, oh my God, they're so succinct. Not even shloka. Shlokas are nice, like the Gita, Dharma, Kshetre, Kuru, Kshetre. Okay, nice little 8-syllable meter, very nice. But the Bhagavatam is poetic. The Bhagavatam is even the saying. The Bhagavatam is the pariksha vidusham. It is the testing ground of the scholar. That's how sophisticated it is. It is very philosophically sophisticated, but poetically. Okay, so let's. I just want to alert you to that. That's not going to be part of our workshop. Glory be to Krishna, whose form is the essence of all rasas. Now we're connecting it to. Oh, I see. Look, this can also be translated. See, didn't I tell you it was double entendre? So the double meaning is glory be to Krishna, whose form is the essence of rasas, because God's form is pure bliss. As a form, it's not made of matter or the gunas, sattva, rajas, tamas, or earth and water. And no, it's made of pure bliss and consciousness. It's a form. Who was captivated? These are gopis, right? The string of stars, Taraka and Pali, right? So he's giving the second meaning. Excited Sham and Lalita, these are all gopis, and is the beloved of Radha. All right, enough of that. Although if you're bhakti, you never get enough of that. Even though I am unworthy, okay, now he's starting off his treatise humbly. I praise the lotus feet of Hari. This is our invocation at the beginning of class. You actually, when you do the invocation, you're putting yourself in the mind of a student, humble and unworthy, my friends. The Indian system of knowledge is descending. And you receive it from surrender to your guru and to your lineage and so forth. Through humility, through recognizing we know nothing. And if you're humble, then what you're really hoping for is the divinity, your guru, Ishvara, will speak through you. Whereas if you're proud, then it's your ego. And it might be intellectually interesting to an audience, but it's not going to touch anyone's heart. It's not going to plant the seed of bhakti. It might be intellectually interesting, like a quantum mechanics course that I'm sitting in on right before this workshop, but not going to touch your heart and make you seek, change your ways and seek truth. So humility, even though I'm unworthy, I praise the lotus feet of Hari, the Lord of consciousness, right? The Lord of the Atman, the Lord of all beings. What are all beings? Consciousness. Compelled in my heart by the inspiration of Caitanya. That's his guru he was talking about, the one who led the Renaissance, Caitanya. So he's offering his pranam to Caitanya, just as I did, just as we did at the beginning of class. May this, and this is the name of the book, right? Bhaktirasāmṛtasindhu. May this ocean of the essence of devotional rasa always delight my eternal Lord of delight, right? Well, that could be his guru or Krishna, and be a worthy abode for his rest. Oh, that is Krishna, because then he says, may it also satisfy my spiritual masters, Caitanya and Sanatana. So that's his brother, Sanatana. And they're both disciples of Caitanya. And Sanatana is his elder brother. So he considers him his guru. So the Lord of Delight is probably whatever the Sanskrit is. We can look at it. I've got it right here. Lord of Delight would be, it doesn't, I don't know if you're interested in this. Lord of Delight, Vishram Anandirata Tasya Sanatana Tor Madishasya. Urmadishasa, Lord of Delight. Okay, so I pay homage to the porpoise-like devotees. He's playing now. He's offering his, at the beginning of the treatise, he's off, he's doing namaha to the Ishvara, namaha to his guru. Now he's doing namaha to the community of devotees. This community of bhaktas is very important in bhakti, not in Patanjali. Patanjali is a Lone Ranger practice. It's a solitary practice. You don't want any. You're trying to nirodha. You don't want to have people around and you start chattering. So it's a solitary process. But bhakti is very much, the association of other bhaktas is huge. It's central to bhakti. What the Christians might call fellowship and lots of other words like that. So he calls them purpose-like, right? Remember, because it's the ocean. right? He's playing on this metaphor of the ocean of the essence. Or at the inside, there are these dolphins. I don't know why you translate it as porpoise, however you pronounce that. So these dolphins, beautiful, elegant, pious, sattvic creatures. He's because he's going with this metaphor. The bhaktas are like that. These bhaktas who have overcome fear of the fishnets of time, right? So time is like a fishnet, capturing the fish in the ocean. But these dolphins, the dolphin devotees, they have no fear of the fishnets. And they've left behind the rivers of moksha. The bhaktas are not interested in moksha, my friends. Huge subtext of the bhakti of the Bhagavata. What's a river if you're swimming in the ocean? Where do you want to go and wet your toe in a river? Even if it's a great grand Ganga, what is that compared to the ocean, my friends? So what's the bliss of the Atman compared to the bliss of the love of God? That's the metaphor. They've left behind the rivers of moksha. They don't want to go swimming in a river anymore, even though it's the same water. It's water. Who wants to? If you're a dolphin, why would you want to go swim in the river if you've got the whole ocean to cruise around in? So that's the subtext here. So Sanatana, his elder brother and guru, may your ocean of the essence of divine rasa. So even though he's writing it, he's crediting it to his guru. He's saying, my guru is speaking through me. I'm surrendering to my guru. My guru this is the attitude of a bhakta. You simply thank your guru for everything. Anything, any success you have, devotional success, not interested in material success. You simply, you recognize that simply as the grace of the guru. So even though it's his brother, Sanatana, may your ocean of the essence of devotion, or he's saying it's Rūpa that's writing it, but he's saying Sanatana is, may it outshine even the Mimamsa fire. The Mimamsas are the Vedic ritualists doing their Vedic rituals, right? For material things. The Mimamsas are one of the 6 schools of Indian, become one of the 6 schools of Indian philosophy. They're the old Vedic ritualists trying to keep the old Vedic fire sacrifice going. And what's the Vedic fire sacrifice all about? It's about getting material things, getting, offspring and victories and enemies. So they have a fire. So he's not very impressed with them. He says it outshines the Mimamsika fire, the Vedic ritualistic fire, dulling its cruel tongue for all time. Now, why is it cruel? Well, animals were offered in the fire. There were animal sacrifices, my friends. Mimamsas, animals were offered. So it's cruel for the bhaktas. They want nothing to do with that, at least in the early period. And then eventually ahimsa becomes more prominent in Indian moksha traditions. And then they stopped offering animals, even the Mimamsas stopped offering sacrifices. But in the old Vedic period, you read the Mahabharata. They're offering sacrifice. What happens after the war? Yudhisthira has the Ashvamedha. It's a huge list of animals that were sacrificed. A great big, huge, just list of a butchery list right there in the Mahabharata. Cruel tongue of the fire. 6, though ignorant, he's saying he's ignorant. Humility. For the delight of sensitive people, I undertake this praise of bhakti rasa. Remember, rasa is the experience, the taste of devotion, the aesthetics of devotion, which makes all worlds joyful. So now he's done his namaha. He's done his namaha to his gurus. He's put himself into a place of humility at the feet of his guru, his brother, Caitanya, and Ishvara, Krishna. Now he tells us what he's going to do. Right? Patanjali says, Atta Yoga Anushasana. He just starts right off, Atta Yoga Anushasana. No guru for Patanjali. 4 divisions of the oceans of right? This is the name of the text, right? Hopefully we made that point. The Bhaktirasāmṛtasindhu. So 4 divisions to the Lord will now be described in order, beginning with the Eastern quadrant. So which is what we're reading. That's all we're reading in this workshop. 4 respective waves. So there's 4 will be presented in the Eastern quadrant, which explains the different categories of devotion. The first wave defines the general characteristics of devotion. We'll get to some of that today. What are the characteristics of bhakti? The second describes the actual means, the sadhana bhakti. We all know this word from Patanjali, kriya yoga. Ashtanga yoga. These are the two kind of yogas that are described in sadhana pada. So same word. So the second wave, right? This is all the first quadrant. We're only doing the Eastern quadrant. Talks about sadhana. And the third concerns the foundational emotions. Emotions are based on something. So a mother's love for the child is based on maternal love, right? Just like when you chitta vritti nirodha, you have to base your mind, you have to alambana, you have to have a support for it. They take that very word alambana, all these words that you find used differently in different processes to illustrate the difference in the paths. So what's the bhav of the mother is the maternal, and then there's a love of a friend to a friend, right? You may have an odd friend. Most of our friends, they're friends when we're in a certain context, and then we go to another context and we're maybe not so friends. But most people have one or two old, childhood friends almost. I have a friend I keep in touch with from England, English boarding school. We send each other little jokes and so forth. So this is, where are we? So bhava, foundational emotions. He's going to talk about the love of the various kinds of love of God. And the fourth wave explains supreme love, the goal, prema. The goal is not your Atman, my friend. It's not Ananda. The goal of bhakti, certainly Krishna bhakti, and other bhaktis are different. Other bhaktis, some bhaktis are just Patanjalian in their goal. Like Advaita Vedanta does a lot of bhakti, but the goal isn't bhakti for the sake of bhakti. The goal is your experience your own self. And of course, in Advaita Vedanta, yourself is the universal self. But let's not get into that. But not here. The goal is eternal love. So the distinguishing characteristic of the highest devotion, they're going to say there's different kinds of devotion. Patanjali's devotion, Ishvara Pranidhana, they're not going to say that's very high. Why not? Because you're asking, gimme, gimme, gimme. What I always call, some of you have heard me say this, the gimme, gimme religion, gimme, gimme bhakti. There's gimme, gimme material things kind of bhakti. Gimme, 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 gimme. I'm, dear God, help me. Dear God, fix my problem. Dear God, heal me. Dear God, gimme, gimme, gimme. There's that kind of gimme, gimme. And there's also a higher level gimme, gimme, which give me moksha, give me moksha. It's still about the self. It's about me. I'm suffering. So, but love of God just because you love God, because God is awesome, because you've fallen in love with this amazing being and you seek relationship with that being. You don't seek anything for yourself other than, of course, relationship with God. That's the highest bhakti, as we'll find out. So the distinguishing characteristic of this highest devotion, he's not interested in this gimme, gimme bhakti, as it is fully known by the sages, are clearly described in the first wave. So that's what we're going to read today. So now he's ready to define what is the highest bhakti. Okay, just like Patanjali says, Atta Yoga Anushasanam, he tells us what he's going to do. What are you going to do now? Well, Atta Yoga Anushasanam, right? So what is Rupa done? He just, first of all, he did his Namaha Namaha to his guru, and then he says, this is what I'm going to do. I've got this ocean, there's 4 quadrants, and there's 4 waves, and here's the first wave. So just like Patanjali, except Patanjali's writing a sutra. You're going to be minimalistic in sutra writing. So there are 4 words, Atta Yoga Anushasanam, and then he tells us what yoga is. What is yoga? Yoga is chitta vritti nirodha. So what is the high? Now he's, this isn't sutra, so he doesn't have to say it so succinctly. So now he's told us what he's going to do. Now he's going to define bhakti. This is the Bhaktirasāmṛtasindhu. Well, what's this bhakti then? What is the highest devotion? It's dedicated to service to Krishna. If you love someone, my friends, we don't like this word service, because for us, we're at this moment where we're sort of shaking, throwing away all our shackles of whatever is colonialism and genderism and racism and elitism and all our isms. And we want to throw away all of anything that smacks of servitude. But if you think it through. If you love someone, what does that mean? Even for us, our mundane love, right? You have kids, you have a beloved. You want to make that person happy. I mean, it's simplistic. In its simplistic core, you want to please that person. Well, that's service then, isn't it? You do stuff for that person to make them happy. Well, call it, give it another name, but it's service. And the interesting thing is, in English, we only have this word service. In Sanskrit, you have a different word for divine service. So it doesn't get mixed up like that with our isms and our, we want to get away from, from our enslavements of the past and our colonialisms and our male dominations and all of that. We have one word, service, whether it's service to mankind, service to a master as a slave. We have the same word. Service to a slave to a master, it's service, or something nice like service to the world or service to the nation, something higher. But we only have that one word. So then the danger is that one word might dredge up negative associations from other ways the term is used, but not in Sanskrit. Because if it's servant in a kind of a physical menial sense is dasya, it's a different word. So seva is the word. It always has positive connotation. There's no question of getting the word seva in Sanskrit muddled up or dragging up baggage from whatever, casteism, which is obviously an issue in India, casteism and other kinds of isms. Seva is dedicated seva. Think about it again. Think about if you really love someone, you just want to make them happy. You do stuff to make them happy. When you do stuff for someone to make them happy, that is seva. So bhakti is to please God. It's not about yourself. Patanjali is about yourself. Right in the third verse, svarupa. You want to avasthanam. You want to be avastitaha. You want to be absorbed in sva, your rupa. And then you bring God into it to give it to you. All right, God, come on. I'll do japa. I'll chant om. Patanjali says tasya vachika pranava. Okay, you come in the sound. Oh, I'm all right. The japa tabarta bhavan. I'm all right. Do my japa. All right, niroda. Okay, now hurry up, God. Come on. I'll be doing it for 10 lifetimes. And then Bhagavan gives it to you. All right, yeah. You want samadhi? Take it. Samadhi siddhirishvara pranidhana. That's not service. That's just asking for stuff. But we'll talk more about that. So what is bhakti? Dedicated service to Krishna that is rendered pleasantly, affectionately. Right? Let's have a look at the Sanskrit. Affectionately, with love, basically. What verse are we on? 11 is anushilana. That is rendered pleasantly, is devoid of desire for anything else, my friends. You're not, no gimme. The highest bhakti. Lower level bhakti is gimme. Highest. Think about it from a mundane point of view. If you have a friend, and the only time the friend ever comes is when they want to borrow money from you. And that's when you only see them when they want to borrow money. Can you lend me a tenner? Can you lend me a tenner? Can you lend me a tenner? After a while, are you going to think, well, what kind of friend is this? You might give him a tenner, but he's not captured your heart. And there might be someone a bit on a higher level. Maybe they come to you when they want learning. That's good, nice. But that's the only time you see them. It's gimme. After a while, you think, well, really, they don't really care about me. They just want learning from me. They want my knowledge. What about someone came and said, didn't ask for anything ever, just adored you and just loved to be with you all the time, no conditions at all? That would capture your heart. So, well, if God is a person, my friends, how's that going to be different? It is infinitely different, an infinite person, so therefore infinitely affectionate, and his infinite heart is caught in an infinite sort of way, but it's the same principle. So it is rendered pleasantly, is devoid of desire for anything else. It's unobstructed by jñāna, all this knowledge of Vedanta, Atman, Brahman. That just makes you proud, my friends. just clutters up your vrittis. Knowledge, too much knowledge. Well, you just get trapped in another kind of ego. You get trapped in a buddhi ahankara. I am the brilliant great scholar. It's unobstructed. That doesn't mean you can't use, I mean, we're doing knowledge here, but we're looking at it we're engaging knowledge in order to seek bhakti, not knowledge for the sake of knowledge. So it's unobstructed by intellectual jnana or purposeful action. No karma, no gimme. It's not, karma here, not karma yoga, but karma, where you do something to get a result. That's karma. Then he quotes this other text, Narada Pancharatra, and that's the Bhakti Sutras, and sometimes we do workshops on the Bhakti Sutras. So Narada says, he's the great sage Narad, greatest bhakta, is one of the 12 great bhaktas in the universe. One of the 12 Mahajans is Narad. He says, completely free from all limitations, no conditions. Not I give you this if you give me that, or I give you this and I'm not going to ask you for anything, but secretly you're now indebted to me. No limitations like that. Completely free, just pure, just surrender to God, not expecting anything, not even bhakti, my friends. We hope for bhakti, but that's a gift of God as well. And if we have to stay 100 lifetimes in samsara before Bhagavan graces us with bhakti, we'll quite happily stay, as long as we can stay on the path of bhakti and have bhaktas as our friends, and have the processes of bhakti. Anyway, completely free from all limitations, dedicated to him, pure, no mix, not mixed with gimme, no mixture, no conditions. That I give you this if you give you that. So what is it? It's service, back to service again, with the senses. You don't close down the senses in bhakti. There's no nirodha, there's no pratyahara. The whole mind, body, all the instruments, because they belong to God. They belong to Bhagavan, because Prakriti is just a Shakti of Bhagavan. Our bodies and minds are Prakriti, made of the gunas. Well, what does Krishna say in the Gita? Devi hi esha guna mai, mama maya. It's mine, these gunas are mine, they're my Shakti. So how are you going to give up something that belongs to Bhagavan? You just offer everything. So you use the senses in chanting, in kirtan, in acts of worship, and in the 64 processes of bhakti that we turn to in the next wave. They all involve the senses. Okay. Even japa. Even if you do chitta vritti nirodha on japa, you're using the tongue and the ear, the senses. Even Patanjali. So completely free of limitations, dedicated to him, pure, service with the senses to the Lord of the senses. That's Hrishikesha. Hrishikeyanam bhaktir uchate. That's the Sanskrit. Hrishikeyanam bhaktir uchate. Bhakti is said to be engaging, giving the senses to the Lord of the senses. Means, what are the senses? Our bodies and minds. We give them credit. So now, one thing we need to get used to, whenever Rūpa makes a statement, he's always going to quote scripture to support his statement. This is what it means to be a traditional anything, a traditional Vedantin, a traditional Bhakta, anything that's in the Vedic tradition. What does that mean? It means you don't make stuff up. Just like Krishnamacharya, right? That's why you're all reading the Yoga Sutras, my friends. Because Krishnamacharya, Guru Jayanga, they put this enormous emphasis on asana. You can't just make stuff up. You need to have some kind of sacred text that supports it. So, okay, Patanjali has 3 verses. All right, I know we'll have Patanjali. Otherwise, nobody reads Patanjali, my friends. The Westerners have brought Patanjali back to life. It had been moribund for 500 years. There were no living lineages. But the point being, at least in Patanjali, he's got 3 verses. Because of these other texts, Hatha Yoga Pradipika, Shiva Samhita, Girenda, no one ever heard of them. You go to India, go anywhere, north, west, south. Have you heard of the Shiva Samhita? They say, huh? Kya bolte ye? Never heard of it. No one's ever heard of them. But the Yoga Sutras is a sutra, and therefore people have heard of it. So, okay, that's then at least you can say that asana is Vedic. So in the same way, he's making these statements that bhakti is a service, but he has to support it with scripture. So he quotes 2 scriptures here. And this is going to be his method throughout. Of the 64 processes of bhakti, right? He's going to outline 64 processes. He's going to give a scriptural verse to support every one. So that's what we're going to be looking at. So we get to read some Bhagavatam and different texts supporting it. So the Narada Pancharatra, the Narada says what? He gives a similar definition, completely free from limitations, dedicated to him, Bhagavan, pure, service with the senses, to the Lord of the senses, a devotion. That's a quote from the Narada Pancharatra, which is a text that everybody will accept. And when it says 3rd canto, it means the Bhagavata. He doesn't always say Bhagavata. He just says the 3rd canto because everybody knows what it is. Anyone reading, but here, BHP, that's the Bhagavata Purana. That's the text that I translate, I've dedicated my life to. The Bhagavata Purana. And in the 3rd chapter, Kapila, the founder of Sankhya, who is an incarnation of Vishnu in the Bhagavata, not in the Shvetashvatara. In the Shvetashvatara, he's a disciple of Shiva, but let's not get too historical. Lord Kapila says to his mother Devahuti, great queen, great yogini. So Kapila says, he's giving a definition of bhakti. Devotion to the Supreme Lord is without motive, not asking for anything. Think about it, my friends. If you are theistic, a Christian or a Jew or a Muslim, or maybe you patched together your own kind of theism, what does it mean? What does it consist of? Don't you go to church and ask God for stuff? What are even the prayers? Give us this day our daily bread. How about that? How about kicking off with a gimme, right? First line. Give us this day our daily bread. That's a gimme bhakti. This text is going to say, that's not love. So devotion to the Supreme Lord is without motive. It's unobstructed. Nothing can block it. Look, even if the 5 kinds of moksha are offered, I'll talk about them in a minute. Devotees do not accept anything but service. Even if moksha is offered to them, like Patanjali, right? Patanjali says, Samadhi Siddhir, Ishvara Pranidhana. Bhaktas don't want it. They want service to God. They don't want their svarupa. They want to be sitting in their all in eternity and infinity in their blissful self. They don't want that. They want to hang out with God. They want to serve God. They want to love God for all eternity. So they walk away from samadhi. Many stories in the Bhagavatam of great jñānis in the forest with their loincloths, did the whole thing, Ashtanga all the way, not like our ridiculous versions of it, but sitting on the banks of a river 12 hours a day, just eating a berry or two, and attain their svarupa. Once they encounter Bhagavan and they've had the near bija experience, walk away from it. No longer go back into near bija, not interested. They want the prema, they want love of God. And then they start dancing and like madmen and rolling around like crazy people with the ecstasy. Now, there's 5 kinds of mokshas, and the Bhagavata completely undermines this idea that all spiritual paths lead to the same goal. Who the heck said that? The paths don't say that. They all claim to be taking us to very different places. Buddhist nirvana is not the same as Patanjali's Svarupa Vastanam. Might be the same as Advaita Vedanta, actually. I think Patanjali and Advaita Vedanta, the experience is the same, even though the theologians pitch it differently. One is dualistic and individualistic and pluralistic, and one is monistic, but the experience is the same. I don't want to get into that. But Kashmir Shaivism, it has a very different grand finale, moksha. It describes its moksha state differently. Who says that they're all the same? They're all different. That doesn't mean that one is right and the rest are wrong. They're all right. They're all right. Why shouldn't they all be right? Why can't the absolute be multifaceted and variegated? Tell me why. If it's absolute, it must be infinitely variegated, not just some static such and under one size fits all. How boring is that? Well, it's certainly boring for a bhakta. So here the Bhagavatam talks about 5 kinds of moksha, but there's lots of others. And these are personalist, co-residents in the same world as God. That's Vaikuntha, the divine realm where Vishnu resides. It's a realm in Brahman made of pure consciousness, the infinite realms, like infinite parallel Vaikuntha realms, full of divine forms and qualities. And the liberated beings there all have Satchidananda forms, and Vishnu, and has infinite forms, and the bhaktas, everyone can have their own Vishnu. You can have your own Bhagavan. It's not like one God and everyone sort of sitting in line waiting for a one moment encounter. So one of them is residence in the same world. That's not a great translation. Realm. It's not a world like in our universe. It's not like that. You can be equal in power. So there are some Shaiva traditions that will say this. You don't become Shiva in the Shiva Siddhanta traditions, the southern ones, not Kashmir Shaivism, that's different. But you can become equal in power with one distinction. Vedanta says, Ishvara power can create a universe, an infinite universe, but the bhaktas can never. But other than that, they can have amazing power. And you can be near the Bhagavan, proximity, and you can have a similarity in form. Shivoham, the Shaivites accept that too. And union is the fifth. That's the liberation of Advaita Vedanta, where you just look, you're not, there's no relationship. It's a merging into Brahman, which the Bhagavata says is just the effulgence of God. This Satchidananda, this all infinite, all pervading, luminous, brilliant Brahman, for the Vaishnavas is the effulgence of the body of God. So that's the fifth. And the devotees reject them, not interested in any of them. Devotees do not accept anything but service. All they want is love. They don't want power, even equal to God. They don't even want to be near God unless they can do service. Then that's okay. Then they'll accept that. They don't want to have a similarity in form again, unless unless it involves service. They totally reject union, because if you unite, there's no difference. If there's no difference, there's no service. Service requires relationship between two. So they reject the fifth type of moksha completely, and we'll see that repeated again and again. This very thing called bhakti yoga has been declared to be the highest aim. This love of God, higher than these other kinds of mokshas. Notice they're not rejected. They're not saying, oh, these are, they're just saying they're not of interest to those who want love. They want love. They don't want all these other things, which are pretty damn cool. Equal in power to God, similar, having a beautiful Satchidananda form of pure consciousness. That sounds pretty cool. The indication, verse 16, of the superiority of the devotees expressed in these verses. Why are they superior? Because they have no self-interest at all. No sva, no self, only Bhagavan, Bhagavan, Bhagavan. So in that sense, their love, their bhakti is superior to those who to the gimme type of bhakti. So the indication of the superiority of the devotees expressed in these verses amounts to a definition of devotion, since it shows its supreme purity. When something is pure, it's not mixed, my friends, not mixed with self-interest. Pure gold, not mixed with another metal. If you have 24 karat gold, it's pure because it's not mixed. If you have pure milk, go to India, you've got to be standing right there next to the cow. Otherwise, they'll mix buffalo milk in with it, and it's not pure. So pure in this sense mean not mixed. And again, I know I'm repeating the same point, but it is very important to understand this level of bhakti. No mixture with give me, not even give me moksha, which is Patanjalian Ishvara Pranidhana. Right. So now that was the definition of bhakti. Everybody clear? Its highest devotion is dedicated service to Krishna. Bhakti, the highest bhakti. There's different kinds of bhakti. There's mixed bhakti. There's karma mishrita bhakti mixed in with material desires. Jnana mishrita bhakti mixed in with desire for moksha, right? But the highest, it's not mixed with anything, is service to Krishna. So underline this 11. If it was a Rutgers course, I put it on your midterm quiz. It's service to Krishna that is rendered pleasantly, affectionately and lovingly, here's the main thing, is devoid of desire for anything else. That's what makes it highest. Is unobstructed by intellectual knowledge. The gopis, the highest of all bhaktas, Krishna's girl, they were illiterate. They didn't even speak Sanskrit. They were cowherd girls. Never educated, never went to school. They grew up in a clearing in the forest with their parents and the cows. So they're the highest bhaktas. So intellectual knowledge can be an obstruction, my friends, because it makes you proud. Trust me, I know that. You're sitting up there, and I'm sure many of you do. You know, a teacher, you know, you want people to like you. You want people to adore you. You want to, after class, you go, how was it? How was it? That's all your ego talking. You want, so it's an obstruction. So unobstructed by intellectual knowledge, or karma, meaning, jnana and karma, which have a self-referential. The self is getting something out of it. Now okay, everybody clear? We move on to the sixth quality. You have questions, then 8 o'clock we can take questions. The 6 qualities, right? And like Patanjali gives a list, and then like the 5 yamas, and then he defines them one by one, and the 5 kleshas, he defines them one by one. He does that several times. He does it with the kleshas, with the yamas, with the angas, even with nirodha, right? Abhyasa, vairagya, and then defines them. So he's going to give a list, and then he's going to discuss them. So what are the qualities of bhakti? What are the symptoms? What qualities does it have? Right? Bhakti A, destroys difficulties. So it removes suffering. Removes, when mind is absorbed in God, it's not aware of anything else. B, bestows auspiciousness. We'll see what he means in a minute. Let's just read the list. C, trivializes moksha. I love that word. Trivializes it. The bliss of moksha is absolutely no interest at all to the bhakta. D, is very difficult to attain, which is interesting because in the Gita, Krishna says it's easy, it's easy, it's easy. In one sense, it's easy. The practices are easy. You don't have to chitta vritti nirodha. Try doing that 12 hours a day, see how hard that is. Bhakti, the practices are easy, but we'll see why it's difficult to attain. E, consists of a special concentrated joy, a special kind of bliss, different from the ananda of moksha. And finally, attracts Sri Krishna because it's pure. If someone, again, go back to our mundane examples, if someone approaches you purely, no, we're not asking for anything, that wins your heart, captures your heart. They just want to be with you. They just adore you. They just think you're the awesome. Who doesn't want to be around that? Well, God is the same. It attracts Sri Krishna. Now, okay, so 6 qualities. Now, okay, A, B, C, D, E, F, okay? Now we're going to do A, number 1, but he's got them in alphabetical order. So all right, 6, A, B, C, D, E, F. That's 6 qualities. And I'm going to mute everybody, which means I have to go down here. I go to participants, and I mute all. Mute all. Okay. So is everybody doing okay? We're not going too fast, I don't think, right? We're being repetitive, and teaching is all about repetition. So now number A. Okay, so keep your eye on the ball. We're going to go through A, B, C, D, E. The first one is destruction of difficulties. By the way, the word here is klesha. Klesha. You're familiar with the kleshas from Kriya Yoga, chapter 2 of Patanjali. So bhakti destroys the kleshas. So kleshas are of 3 types: sin, the seeds of sin, and avidya, ignorance. And I don't like this word sin because, I don't like using Western terms because it all too easily conjures up notions that some of us are maybe trying to run away from our Western religious traditions. I mean, certain things that historically have been used to abuse people, to exert power on people, to create an anti-intellectual environment, and certain words, and you all know what I'm talking about, so I'm not going to specify, have baggage. So it's better not to use terms like sin, but he's translated it, so let's go with it. What is sin? So 3 things here. Remember, we're still on A. A is subdivided into 3, right? Just like Patanjali, right? Pramana is subdivided into 3. Pramana, one of the five vrittis, and Pramana subdivided pratyaksha. I'm just making connections structurally with intellectual exposition. Give a list, break it down, but some of the items in the broken down list also have subdivisions. So, what is this? It's papa, or it's really adharma. It's adharma. That's a better word. Non-righteousness. Because when we think of sin, sometimes we think of going against the will of a very angry, psychotic, vengeful God. And that's not a very pleasant image for many, right? So genocidal God, we might also add. So whereas the actual term is adharma or papa. Papa means adharma, means just going against righteousness. It's not going against the will of anyone. It's just that there are laws of dharma, laws of righteousness. And if everybody follows dharma, then the universe functions harmoniously and in the best possible way for a samsaric situation. Right. Sin is of two types. That which has not yet begun to take effect, right? It's lying in storage, right? And that which has already begun to take effect, that's prarabdha. So what's taken effect already? Well, you're in a body, aren't you? So that your karma that gave you this body has taken effect. And, Patanjali calls it jati ayo bhoga. So it's prarabdha and aprarabdha. That which hasn't yet taken effect, maybe it's lying in storage for the next life. We don't know when karma activates. Could be 10 lives down the road. Okay. So now of these two types, he's going to discuss the two types. The destruction of papa. Let me just get the word. What is klesha? What is this word for sin? Klesha papa. It's papa. Papa is adharma. So the destruction of sin, right, that has not begun to take effect. In other words, bhakti destroys both kinds of. Bhakti. Let's keep our eye on the ball. The 6 qualities of bhakti. It destroys difficulties. That means it destroys what he's calling sin. Okay, so it destroys the klesha. And then he says these kleshas are 3 types. And he's going to show how bhakti destroys all 3. That's where he's going with this. Right? So that whether it has not yet begun to take effect, whether it's already begun to take effect, bhakti destroys it. Just like Patanjali says, what you do when you do Kriya Yoga, klesha tanu karana, you weaken the kleshas, same thing. What do you do when you do Ashtanga? Ashuddhi Yoganga Anushthanat, Ashuddhi you destroy the Ashuddhi, the sin, papa, nothing. Any yoga does that. All yoga claims to purify, otherwise how would we ever get out? We need a process. Otherwise, we've got infinite karma, my friends. We'll never get out. So yoga, one of the things, any yoga, any moksha tradition offers a path, a method to purify the mind. So this is the same. It's just saying bhakti does this. Right. Okay, the 2 types. Not yet, aprarabdha and prarabdha, that which hasn't taken effect yet and which has. Okay, now you can't just make a statement. You've got to quote a verse from a text that everybody accepts. Bhagavata Purana, 11th skanda. And what's the verse? Krishna is talking to his close friend and advisor Uddhava in the 11th book. And there's a verse identical to this in the Gita, by the way. He could have quoted the Gita here. Just as a blazing fire turns all fuel into ashes, O Uddhava, so bhakti focused on me, because bhakti means focused on Bhagavan. What else is he going to focus on? I'll be clear about that. Hopefully that's obvious. So bhakti focused on me completely consumes all sins. And notice in the Gita, the identical metaphor, except instead of saying bhakti, Krishna says jñāna there. The fire of jñāna destroys all sins. Anyway, let's not make too much of that. So bhakti destroys all of our bad karma, my friends. And now we've got another verse. Even a lowly dog eater, and of course this comes from a caste culture, and a dog eater would be sort of considered low on the social hierarchy. But my friends, before we trash the Indian caste system, How would you feel? And we mentioned this in class the other day in Rutgers. How would you feel if a dog eater moved in next door? Your nice little neighborhood, and your nice little, nice little whatever you got, and then next door, a family moves in and they're barbecuing dogs in the front door. Would you think they're a little bit low on the social hierarchy? I bet you would. I bet you'd have a few things to say. So even if lowly dog eater is immediately made fit for the Soma, high Brahmin sacrifice, only the Brahmins in ancient India, Brahmins are doing only the Brahmins. If a dog eater, if a Brahmin is walking to do a Soma sacrifice in the morning, a Vedic fire sacrifice, and the dog eater walks past, doesn't touch him, if the shadow, my friends, of the dog eater touches the shadow of the Brahmin has got to go jump in the river and take bath before he go back and do his sacrifice. That was the purity and sort of consciousness, the purity, ahankara of the Brahmana caste in ancient India. And Krishna's saying, look, even a lowly dog eater, he not only he can actually do the Soma sacrifice, which only Brahmins are supposed to do. So by a bhakti, what he's saying is bhakti purifies everything, everybody, even the lowly dog eater, immediately made fit by becoming pure through bhakti. For the high Vedic sacrifice, the Soma sacrifice, how? By singing, hearing, and meditating on your name. By chanting, by kirtan, by absorbing the mind through these senses. Remember, bhakti is using the senses in and offering them to the Lord of the senses. Here's the sensual activity, singing, that's your sense of your tongue. Hearing, that's your ear. And meditating, that's your inner sense of the mind on your name, which is non-different. Even Patanjali says, tasya vachaka, it's non-different from Bhagavan. And by bowing to you, namaha, and remembering you, smarana. How much more so is this true from a direct vision of you? If a lowly dog eater becomes higher than a Brahmin just by these practices, what about someone who's actually had a vision of God? How pure is that person? And the goal is vision. All yoga, the goal is vision. The goal of Patanjali is vision. Swarupa Vastanam. That's why does Patanjali call him a seer? Drashtu Swarupa Vastanam, verse 2, 3. The seer. Why the seer? What does a seer do? Sees. Why doesn't he say Atman or Purusha? Who knows what Atman does? How much is the word? I mean, but the seer is very clearly indicating what a seer does, sees. So the seer sees its own nature. Notice how he's very carefully using the term seer because he wants to emphasize if you do Chitta Vritti Nirodha, you don't just talk about the Atman like Vedanta study and all the Atman this and the Atman that and Brahman and read the Upanishad. You see. So that's the goal of all these traditions. Okay, now a low birth makes one ineligible. Normally, if you have a low birth, like we are considered to have had, if you go to India today, my friends, even today, you go down to South India to these strongholds of Vedanta orthodoxy, they're not going to teach you if you're a Westerner, or to speak of if you're a female Westerner. No one teach you, not the real sannyasis they won't. They'll send you off to some, professor. They'll say, oh, go study with somebody else. They won't sit with you, even today. And I'm not saying everywhere. There are still strongholds like that. So, but bhakti, a low birth normally makes one ineligible for Soma sacrifice. You can't do Vedic sacrifices if you're a dog eater. And the cause of low birth is sin that has already begun to take effect. Patanjali calls it jati. You know the verse that when the kleshas are there, klesha, mula, karmashaya, drishta janma vedaniya, the kleshas are the root, and they manifest in sati mule, as long as the root of the kleshas are there, tad vipaka, then they manifest as your jati, means a caste. Jati ayurboga. Nobody knows how many castes in India. There are 4 main castes, but those main castes that we talk about, the 4 varnas, they're subdivided into thousands. You can't count them. Every town has its own unique, like the leatherworking community. Even within a leatherworking community, there'll be different castes. Those that pick up the dead animals will be one jati. Those that work the leather, another jati. even within one trade, there'll be a myriad of different sort of jatis. So a low jati, like a dog eater, if you're born in a family and you eat dogs, makes one, I know we don't like to talk like that nowadays, but this is I don't think this is just ancient India. Go to England, they still talk like this. And certainly they would have talked, the whole world would be talking like this 100 years ago about higher, how maybe in America it's more of a social thing, rich versus poor, but Europe and everywhere else in the world, up until very, very recently, my friends, was caste conscious in ways that look, even today, lurking beneath the surface. So a low birth makes one ineligible for soma sacrifice. And the cause of low birth is sin that has already begun to take effect. But what did he say previously? You become fit for the soma sacrifice by what? Singing, hearing, and meditating on your name. So bhakti knows no caste, my friends, knows no gender, knows no distinctions. And therefore it's very different from Vedic ritualism on the one hand, and Vedanta study on the other. Real Vedanta study, like going down to the strongholds and studying with the real acharyas. They're not going to teach the Westerner. And then, nowadays, they might send you off to one of their disciples or students, but they're not. I mean, if you enter and sit down in the back, they're not going to do anything, but they're not going to sit with you. There may be exceptions. Of course, there are exceptions. But there still are those. I'm not saying they're all like that. Perhaps some of you have met, some exceptions, but there are still those that are orthodox in that way. So what about the destruction of the seeds of sin? The second kind of sin is the seeds, not yet manifest. So they're in seed form. Remember, there are two types of seeds, prarabdha and aprarabdha. Prarabdha, those are already activated. The body you have right now, the gender you have right now, the social situation you have right now, the health conditions you have right now, the monetary access to resources you have right now. That's already activated. What about the seeds? You don't know when they're going to activate. You could get hit by a truck tomorrow. You could win the lottery tomorrow. So, and you want to destroy both, good and bad, remember, punya. So the destruction of the seeds, not yet activated of sins, and is illustrated in the Bhagavad Purana 6th book, right? Krishna's stories in the 10th book. That's what makes the Bhagavata famous. The other books are just regular like any Purana, right? So how can they be removed? This is a very interesting verse. If you care to pay attention to this, my friends, you might find it interesting. Normally, not in bhakti, but let's say in jnana traditions, yoga traditions, not necessarily bhakti, sins can be removed, right? Patanjali says Kriya Yoga. Of course, he's got Ishvara Pranidhana there. So they snuck that in. But otherwise, let's say there's no, Ishvara, it's not an Ishvara tradition. So sins can be removed by asceticism, that's tapas, by charity, dhanam, by vows like fasting, vrata. But these actions will not remove the source of sins born from wickedness. In other words, you can destroy the sins through these other things. These are non-bhakti things. Bhakti doesn't reject them. Bhaktas do this, but they offer it to Bhagavan. But let's say a tradition that doesn't have Bhagavan and just does tapas and charity and vows, it does burn the sin, but it doesn't burn the desires, the kleshas that caused the sin in the first place. So it's compared to an elephant who jumps in the river, gets all nice and clean, comes out and rolls in the sand again. Because its nature is to roll in the sand. So you do these other things, you burn up your karma, and then immediately go back and do the same karma again. Like, remember confessions. Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned. It's been 2 weeks since my last confession, and since then I snuck out of school and I had a ciggy, and I had a ciggy in the parking lot. And okay, all right, 10 Hail Marys. And next week, oh, forgive me, Father, for I have sinned. Well, I snuck out, I had a ciggy in the park. Why? Because the attraction for the cigarette is still there. So you can get absolved from it, but the seed is there. So this is what he's saying. Sins can be removed by actions like asceticism, charity, and vows, but these actions will not remove the source of sins born from, I think this is klesha. Let me see the word for wickedness. I don't like these words, wickedness, because they're too harsh. It's adharma. It's just adharma. That sounds much less. When we think of wickedness, again, it conjures up our medieval worlds that we have run away from. Adharma just means non-righteousness. Patanjali calls it apunya, punya. So where are we? It doesn't remove the source. Yet even the source can be removed by service to the feet of the Lord, which is bhakti. So bhakti doesn't just destroy the fruits of the sin, it destroys the inclination, the tendency, the kleshas that are deeply rooted in the psyche. It destroys those, my friends. And then he gives a little verse. We know that whenever he makes a claim, he's got to substantiate the claim. The destruction of ignorance is illustrated in the 4th canto. The wise, the vidvan, cut the knots of egoism formed by karma, right? So when we act out of desire, who's the recipient of desire? The body-mind. What's ego? To think I'm body-mind. Asmita. Drishtarshana shaktayor ekatmata eva. Asmita, Patanjali. To think that the seer and the instruments of sight, what's the instruments of sight? The body. Body is all instruments. Senses, mind, they're just instruments. Who's the seer? Atman. Right? So when we go out and chase a desire, who are we doing it for? We're not doing it for the Atman. But man has no desires. When it's in its own nature, it's blissed out. That's even, I'm talking jnana here, not talking bhakti. So when we do karma, not karma yoga, karma, and we do action in the world to fulfill a desire, that desire fortifies the ego, because who's the recipient of the desire? The false self, the body, mind, I. So when I go out and try to satisfy desire, I'm just fortifying my ego, because I'm fortifying my identification with the body, mind that is receiving the desire, that the desire is aimed to please the body, mind. So the wise cuts the knots of egoism formed by karma. How? By means of devotion to the splendor of the lotus petaled feet of Vasudeva. Even the feet of God are gorgeous. You could spend all eternity just blissfully having a darshan of the big toe, of the toenail of Vishnu. You spend all eternity just gazing at that toenail. It's so exquisite. Whereas the ascetics, not the bhaktas, the tapis, the chittavritti nirodha people, ascetics, they're going to still the mind by asceticism. Nirodha, prachara, right? Gnarly beards and gnarly hair and loincloths in the forest, red eyes. Vyas comes out the forest, got red eyes from all his tapas. The ascetics who have emptied their minds, well, hello, ding, 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 ding. Who's emptying their minds? Chittavritti nirodha. What's nirodha? Empty. So the ascetics who have emptied their minds and suppressed the senses, pratyahara, are unable to accomplish this. They can burn the karma, they can burn but they cannot remove, according to the Bhagavatam, they cannot remove the seeds. Now, Patanjali would say something different. So we have a difference here. Patanjali would say that Kriya Yoga, but even notice, even Kriya Yoga, he says klesha tanu, he says you weaken them. He doesn't say you eliminate them. You notice that? Look at 2.2. Go home and pull out your Yoga Sutra, 2.2. What do you get from Kriya Yoga? Samadhi bhavana artha. What's the purpose? The artha is samadhi bhavana. It gives you samadhi, but klesha tanu weakens them. Although later on with Ashtanga, he will say that what you do, the Ashtanga, Yoga Anga Anushthanat, Ashuddhikshaye, that then he says they're destroyed. They're destroyed, you destroy the kleshas. But you better stay in a state of nirodha, my friends, according to the Bhagavatam, because if you don't, all of those desires come back. So by sheer willpower, you can nirodha the mind, you can burn up the karma, but you better not do anything else. You better not go out and, because you'll immediately, there's a great story in the Bhagavatam, in the 9th book of Shaunaka Rishi, or Shamika Rishi, and he so desperately wants to chittavritti nirodha and not get distracted. He meditates under the water. Remember, Patanjali says there's 4 kinds of pranayama: incoming breath, outgoing breath, restrained breath. What's the 4th? You stop breathing altogether. And it's always been considered a a claim that's been made. All the moksha traditions, the Buddha claims to have mastered it anyway. So this sage sat under the water, thought, I'm not going to get distracted under here. And he sits under the water. Oh, no one's around. And he's meditating, Nirodha, Nirodha, Nirodha. And one day he just opens his eye just a second. And the two little fishes swim by and they mate, and they're mating. How erotic is that? Is that erotic? Two fish mating? I don't think so. But when you're in a supreme state of repression, my friends, that's all it takes to trigger a volcano in the mind. Because infinite births. Remember, you've been engaging in erotic activities for infinite births as a bull elephant, a female elephant, whatever it might be. And all of that's latent, and anything can trigger that lot off. And immediately he was overwhelmed by irresistible sex desire, went out, married 50, married 50 sisters, because he was a great sage. So the point of the story is exactly this. You can burn your karma, but you better stay in that state of nirodha, because the minute you let your willpower go, that all of that unconscious comes surging back. Whereas bhakti, right? So let's read it again. The wise cuts the knots of egoism formed by karma, means acts by means of devotion. That's how they cut it. Whereas the ascetics, who have emptied their minds, as a complete reference to chitta-vritti nirodha practice, and suppress the senses, that's pratyahara, are unable to accomplish this. They can't get rid of the root seeds. Therefore, take refuge of Vasudeva, another name of Krishna. So now he quotes the Padma Purana, the highest devotion for Hari, which is accompanied by knowledge. If you have bhakti, you automatically have knowledge. You know about the Atman, because you know everything about Hari. If you know about Hari, you know about his Shaktis, you know about Maya, you know about Avidya, because these are all Shaktis of Bhagavan. So you have knowledge. It's just that you're not seeking knowledge for the sake of knowledge. You get knowledge just as a byproduct of being absorbed in Bhagavan, because Bhagavan, in one sense, is everything. So the highest devotion for Hari, which is accompanied by jnāna, quickly burns up ignorance, avidya, as a forest fire burns up serpents. Okay, so keep your eye on the ball. The 6 qualities, let's go back. The 6 qualities of bhakti. The 6 qualities of bhakti, number 1, destroys difficulty. We've just discussed it. It destroys your karma, whether it's activated, not yet activated, whatever the situation. And he's contrasted it with other practices which do destroy the karma, but do not destroy the inclination, the adharmic inclination rooted deep in, as Freud would call it, the unconscious. Freud was onto something there. He just didn't really, he was really onto something, but he just was navigating in a one life model. He didn't know what the heck the id was. It was this wild beast in there. He didn't know where's that come from? Because he's trying to understand it in one life. But if he'd have known, if he didn't, engage the idea of multiple lives, then he would have known where the id came from. It came from when we were tigers. It came from when we were Anglo-Saxons hacking our way across England in butchery and gore, and we've all been there. Genghis Khan. Right, so that's number A, destroys all or difficulties. Now we're going to move on to B, that bhakti bestows auspiciousness. So what does that mean? And let's have a look at the Sanskrit. B, where are we? The bestowal of shubhadatvam. It gives shubha, auspiciousness. We have kirtan tonight, my friends, at 8 o'clock, if you care to linger. So the destruction of ignorance. Okay, now he's going to quote the 4th canto, BHP, Bhagavat Purana 4, section 22. You should all read the Bhagavatam if you really want to understand bhakti. In fact, the text says if you read it from beginning to end, you will attain bhakti just by that act. You'll be on the path and that's it. Even if you fall off, you'll come back next life. So the Bhagavat Purana, it's a quintessential text on bhakti. 18,000 verses, it's a big thing. Right. The bestowal of auspiciousness down here. Oh, I'm sorry. I was in the wrong place. Okay. So the wise speak of such auspicious aspects of this as these. What is the auspiciousness that bhakti bestows? The delight and attraction of all beings in the world. All beings love a pure bhakti because you're pure. You have no selfishness, my friends. Anyone coming in contact with you immediately recognizes that. Even animals do. Think of St. Francis of Assisi in the hagiography. You're pure. No, just the mind is absorbed in Bhagavan. Anyone can relate to that. Anyone can see you're not trying to get something off them. You're not trying to posture. You're not trying to impose your power on them intellectually or in any other sort of way. So the delight, what happens when you become pure bhakti? The delight and attraction of all beings in the world. Everyone is attracted to you. This is what we should aspire for, my friends, if we want to become saints. We have to aspire for this. At least set that goal, set that bar, even if it takes us many lives, set that bar, because then we can touch the hearts of others, as our hearts have been touched by our teachers. So the delight and attraction of all beings in the world, and then automatically all good qualities, the regular good qualities, yamas, niyamas, they're just automatic, right? You don't have to list them separately. Rūpa says we're not even going to bother listing those, they're just automatic. And happiness, you're happy. You've given up your ego, clinging to this ego that never satisfies you. This desires never satisfies. So we're always frustrated. We're always, I'm missing something. Oh, I need this. Oh, well, I got this, but it didn't do what I thought it was going to do. These are just the auspicious. And notice, this is not love. This is just a sort of we're not talking about love now. We're not talking about high levels of love, which is the ultimate goal. We're just talking about side effects. They're little side effects, just like Patanjali has those verses. Remember, if you follow the yamas and niyamas, and he has 10 verses, well, your body will become strong. And, if you're brahmachari, you'll retain your energy. And he has all of these, the side effects. So, but bestowal of auspiciousness. Now, he has to illustrate them, remember. This is going to be all the way through. You illustrate every claim. So now, the delight and attraction of all beings in the world are illustrated in the Padma Purana. So he quotes another Purana. There's 18 Puranas, the Bhagavata being by far the most important. It has hundreds, it has well over 100 commentaries, whereas the Padma has maybe one. So now he gives the verse. All beings in the world are delighted by him who worships Hari, and all animate and even animate beings are attracted to him. Even animals pick up on that aura, my friends. Don't we have this in all the saint legends of the world? The pure side. What are the halos in Christian iconography all about? Now, what about the bestowal of good qualities? Now he's back to the Bhagavatam. Now, God's here doesn't mean Ishvara, it means little celestial beings. Celestials with all good qualities abide in one whose devotion for the Lord is not motivated by desire for anything. He's going to keep our eye on that ball. To be on this high level, that you have this effect on all beings, it has to be pure bhakti. Remember what pure bhakti is. Spelled it out. Not motivated by desire for anything, including and even especially moksha. Because if you attain the state of moksha, you've just deprived yourself of a possibility of a relationship with Bhagavan. The Bhagavata says that's hell. That's hell. It's like going to prison. You deprive yourself of life in the civic society, or hell. You're deprived of, you're stuck in this place. So being stuck in Svarupa for the Bhagavatam is hell, because you've just given up the possibility of a relationship with that Ishvara, who, if you want moksha, will give it to you. He'll give it to you. It's like if you want daily bread, he'll give you that. Manna, I'll give you manna in the desert. Drop out the sky. Go on, have some manna. Have some chapati, just throw them out the sky. Roll them out, throw them out. So if that's what you want, is that what you want? You want God to make chapatis for you? Oh my God. All right. So God's, meaning the celestials, not Ishvara, but the little, beings that with good karma, they go to a celestial realm. God's celestials with good quality, they say this verse, abide in one, all the celestials, abide in one whose devotion for the Lord is not motivated by desire for anything. But where are these great qualities to come from for the one who is not a devotee of Hari and is running after unreal, external objects out of desire. The more we run after these objects, the more we become self-centered, the more we see everything in terms of how it can be of use to us. We see other people in terms of their usage, their ability to satisfy our needs, even if we're nice about it. Pay attention, my friends, and be honest, just to yourself. You don't have to, pay attention. When you talk to people, you want something. You're nice. I mean, I have students come in all the time. Oh, very nice, very nice. And then after the course, you never hear from them again. It was, we all do. We all experience this. So where are these great qualities to come from? Where are they going to come from? If your self-motive interest, where are the good qualities going to come from? Everything's going to be refracted through your own desires. Right. Now, happiness. Why is he talking about happiness? We're still on B, the bestowal of auspiciousness. Right. So therefore, okay. Happiness is the third, right? So we're on B, right? The sixth, bhakti has 6 qualities. The second is auspiciousness, which is subdivided into 3, right? The first is that everybody loves you, the delight and attraction of all beings in the world. The second is you just, regular, mundane, good qualities. You have those automatically. And fourth is happiness, right? Third is happiness, right? But we're still on B. So where's happiness? Happiness is of 3 kinds. 3 kinds of happiness, basic kinds. That which is ordinary, that's the happiness you get when you have your cappuccino in the morning, or your whatever it is, Ben and Jerry. That which is ordinary, that which relates to impersonal Brahman, that is moksha. The happiness of the Satchit Ananda, the Ananda of the Atman, or impersonal Brahman, Brahman that is not Bhagavan, that is just impersonal, all-pervading, infinite, eternal, blissful Satchit Ananda consciousness. That's the second kind. The third kind of happiness relates to the Ishvara. That's the bliss of bhakti. And that's obviously what the bhaktas seek. But really, they just seek Bhagavan. If Bhagavan gives them bliss, fine. If not, they don't care. So now he's got to support that. So he quotes the Tantra. Tantra just means a type of text. It doesn't mean left-handed, right-handed Tantra, the Bengali Tantra. No. Tantra in this older text just means non-Vedic. So in the older text, now we think of Tantra, we think of right-handed Tantra and left-handed Tantra, but that's now. But back then, Tantra just means a non-Vedic text. So in some ways, he's got a footnote 26. Let's just see let's see how David Haberman, I forgot to look this up. Oh, you know what he says? He says, I have no idea which Tantra this refers to. Rupa quotes it from it 5 times. So whatever, but Tantra is a non-Vedic text. All right, we're talking about the 3 kinds of happiness, okay? 31, all marvelous spiritual powers, the siddhis. You have siddhis, they can make you happy, fly, walk on water, do all kinds of cool things. Okay, ordinary enjoyment, when you eat a good meal. Eternal moksha, you can be, moksha, the enjoyment of Brahman, the Satchidananda, that is the goal of Advaita Vedanta, that's the goal of Sankhya, that's the goal of Nyaya, that's the goal of Patanjali even. And never-ending supreme joy. And then he says, all are obtained from devotion to Govinda. Notice Patanjali. Even Patanjali, Ishvara will give it to you. You want moksha? You don't want, you want, even Patanjali says Ishvara will give it to you. It's actually resonating with this. What is the function of Patanjali in the Yoga Sutra? Samadhi Siddhir Ishvara Pranidanat 2, chapter 2, round about in the 30s. And then he gives another illustration in the Hari Bhakti Shuddhodaya, another text. O God of gods, I pray again and again that firm devotion for you be mine. Right? This is what the bhaktas pray for. They don't pray for stuff. They pray for bhakti. And what's bhakti? Service. And service means service to another, not me. So if you want to pray, this is the prayer of the bhaktas. Give me bhakti. Give me pure service. Give me pure love. Give me service. Give me service that I can perform for you. This is the prayer of the bhakta. This is what we pray for every day. Some of us through teaching, through whatever it might be. Kirtan, Lakshmi is going to sing a kirtan for us in a little bit, and that's his particular forte. Lakshmi Nrsinga's service, if he's there, I hope he's there. So I pray again and again that firm devotion for you be mine. A devotion which, like a creeper, like creeps, it grows and grows and grows, bears happiness, and the fruit of the four goals that culminate. You get all that moksha and all that. You pick up the Atman on the way. You get material well-being. The four goals of life are dharma, artha, kama, moksha. You become righteous. You have facility. Ishvara gives you whatever you need. Yoga kshema vahamyaham. So you get all that trivial stuff. The four goals. But the bhakta is not interested in any of it. He gets it, picks it up. It's like your MA. It's useless. What are you going to do with your MA? You've got a PhD. You're not even going to put it on your wall. Unless you're really desperate for, put certificates up. You're just going to put your PhD. Where are you going to put an MA, MPhil, BA, what else? High school diploma. Give me a break. You put a PhD, it includes everything. So this is the prayer. You want to pray? No gimme. No Ishvara pranidhana for samadhi. What do you pray for? Firm devotion for you be mine. A devotion which is like a creeper. It grows and grows and grows. Okay, now we're on the third. Okay, keeping our eye on the ball. C, right? Right, these are the characteristics of bhakti, right? Where we were, right? We're on the characteristics of bhakti, which I know you know it, but when you do your asana, don't you do it again and again and again? You can't tell the teacher, oh, we did downward dog yesterday. We should throw you out of the room. So we go again and again and again, right? So the 6 qualities of devotion. We've done destroys difficulties, the 2 kinds of sin. We've done bestows auspiciousness. Oh, we just finished that. What's the third? Trivializes moksha. Not interested in moksha. How about that? The goal of other yoga processes, bhakti, is not interested in that. And this may be our last thing for this evening. And that's fine. So how many verses are there here? 37. So we got 4. Yeah. So this is C. The trivialization of moksha, meaning you don't reject it. You don't say it doesn't exist. You don't say it's a false path. You don't say it's a false goal. You just say, well, it's all the things that the yogis say it is, but we're not interested in it. You don't try to say, oh, it's something different, or it's wrong, or it's evil, or it goes, no, it's moksha is exactly what the moksha traditions say it is. We're not interested because we want our Bhagavan. That's what it is. So loving bhakti is difficult to, trivialization. Oh, look, it's only 2 verses. Then we're on D. Okay. But this is kind of, the Bhagavatam actually really stresses this as a subtext all the way through. The greatest sages, Shuka, the 4 Kumaras, Vyasa, the great Bharata, the great role models in the Bhagavatam before you get to the 10th book, which is the story of Krishna. So the other 9 books kind of prepare you to understand the encounter with God. In the 10th book, you're going to encounter God under Yoga Maya, hiding his majesty and to please his bhaktas and exchanging the most delightful, loving exchanges. To understand that, otherwise you're just going to think, what kind of a God is this? Toddling around, and stealing butter and calling the wives of others with his flute. Can you imagine what the missionaries thought in the 19th century? What kind of a God is this? These Hindus are very nice people, but their gods are licentious. They worship the penis of Shiva, and the god who steals the wives of others. And Kali, who's got all these. I didn't have a clue what the theology was. And we have to save them from Satan's grasp. You can read. There's some very good books on this. Actually, many missionaries are quite sincere, by the way. They really thought they were all going to hell, and they were going to save them. Anyway, Trivializations of Moksha, great book. Resistant Hinduism, I recommend it. It's about, no, not resistant Hinduism. That's when the pundits responding to Christian theology philosophically. Now, there's a book called, Eleonora?
Imagined, yeah.
Imagine what? Hinduism. Imagine Hinduism. You should read that if you're interested in even some of those subtle negative associations with Hinduism are still lingering, my friends, because they've been percolating in the sort of airwaves of Western intellectual and social and cultural circles since the colonial period. Because you're going to be a colonial, you got to, you got to colonize and you got to missionize, and that, so therefore you have to depict the other as somehow inferior. So you send back all these reports. Anyway, trivializations of moksha. When the heart is filled with even a little love for the Lord, a little, the four goals of life culminated in moksha turn to nothing but straw. Completely insignificant. This is what is meant by trivialization. In Indian culture, when you want to say something is insignificant, you call it a straw. It's a standard trope to portray insignificance. We just say a straw. And the word is trina. Let me just check that. Trina. It's a trina. So moksha, the straw. Absolutely. What's a straw? Has no value. It's just dry. No value. Maybe a cow can eat it. One straw. How much value does it have? It has a little bit of value. Give it to a cow, will eat it. But that's not very much, is it? How much milk can you get if you give a cow one straw? And now another verse from the Narada Pancharatra, also speaking to addressing the trivialization of moksha. All spiritual powers, these are the siddhis, the mystic powers of Patanjali, chapter 3, all siddhis, moksha as well, so forth, and all marvelous enjoyments, they follow in the train of the great goddess of devotion to Hari like her servants. They just kind of tag along behind, like servants of bhakti. They're there. They sort of, they kind of, they walk along behind. They stumble along behind all these other attainments, including the siddhis. Great bhaktas have siddhis. They don't use them. Even Patanjali says, you don't want to use them if you're a real yogi. So there we are. And we have 2 minutes to go. The next one is how many verses? Do you want to do another? I think we'll leave it there because I want to take some questions, and and we have kirtan. If Lakshmi's here. Lakshmi, you there? Can you unmute? Lakshmi Ji, Maharaj. Prabhu. Maybe it's not there. Lakshmi. All right. Maybe you'll just log on at 8. Any questions, my friends? You'd have to unmute yourself and then mute yourself and then mute yourself again. Questions on any of this? How is it? Is this what you were expecting? Are you getting is this unexpected? Is it of interest? Hopefully.
I had a question, if it's possible.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Just at the beginning, when there's the idea of the rejection of the 5 kinds of mokshas.
Yeah.
And the way that they're described.
Yeah.
It sounds like the gopis and the cowherder boys. The equality, the motherly love, the different. Is that Vaikuntha?
No, that's Goloka. That's Vaikuntha is Vishnu, where Vishnu is Narayana. Okay. Narayana Vishnu. There's infinite Vaikuntha realms.
Okay, Goloka. Yeah.
It's Goloka, and that's there, and then the bhaktas there serve, because bhakti is service. They serve Krishna in the form of a cowherd boy. Okay. Whereas the Vaikuntha, they serve God in awe and majesty, because Narayana is awesome and majestic, a bit like the God of the Old Testament, and there's thrones and gold and wonderful, all made of pure consciousness, of course. And this world is like Plato would say, it's like the reflection on the cave. It's like the shadow on the cave. So this world is full of dead matter, and but whatever's beautiful and the forms and qualities here are actually a reflection of the fact that there's forms and qualities in the divine. But here they're made of inner matter, the 3 gunas, sattva, rajas, tamas, and there it's all Satchidananda Brahman. It's like condensed Brahman. You can think of it as condensed Brahman, okay. The forms. So yes, so Narayana has the Vaikunthas, infinite Vaikunthas, but there's a lot of majesty there. And the bhaktas there, the great devotees there, they have forms like Vishnu. So they have some of these they have the forms like Vishnu, they live near Vishnu, they have the powers of Vishnu. And the Krishna tradition says, yes, we can accept those as long as they allow, as long as they accommodate service.
Okay.
They reject the fifth, because in the fifth, there's no forms or qualities. There's no individuality. There's no, I'm not me. The Atman ceases to be an Atman. It merges. It becomes infinite. It attains an infinite potential. And there's no Bhagavan, because you're Svarupa Vastana. You're absorbed in your own nature. If you're absorbed in your own nature, you're not absorbed in any other nature, whether that's material or whether it's God. Either way, if you're Svarupa Vastana and absorbed in yourself, your own pure, nature, you're not absorbed in anything else, including God. Bhaktas don't want to have nothing to do with that.
Okay.
That's what they say is like hell for us, because we are separated from our beloved Bhagavan in that state. And that's why they reject that kind of moksha. The other four, they don't reject quite so. They're quite happy to accept it, provided I know the verse says they reject it, but there's a discussion of this in the nephew of Rūpa, in fact, nephew of Rūpa. He's the second greatest theologian in the tradition. He says, well, we can accept the other four, provided there is service to our Bhagavan. So it's nothing wrong with living near Bhagavan, having the same form as Bhagavan, provided that we can engage in service all the time with no obstruction, no interruption whatsoever.
Thank you. I think I get it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a very different, this kind of bhakti hasn't really been come over to the West as much as the jnana traditions have, and the moksha traditions and the yoga traditions. Any other questions, my friends? Lakshmi, are you there?
I have a question, if I may.
Yeah.
It probably sounds fairly simple, but the desire for bhakti as a focus, is it karmic? Is that what they would say? They would say it's your karma that makes you have that desire? Or is it Ishvara grabbing you and pulling you?
We don't know
what I mean?
I do see what you mean. There's no way to answer that. Because any desire has to come from the outside. Right? So when you have your first taste of ice cream as a 2-year-old, right, the mother puts the spoon in your mouth, right, and now you have a pleasant sensation that's recorded as a memory that can arise at any time as a desire, right? So bhakti is no different. It's got to come in from the outside. It doesn't just pop up magically, because the only thing that pops up in the mind is what already is in the mind. There's no sort of creatio ex nihilo in any Indian philosophical tradition, no creatio ex nihilo. So therefore it has to come from the outside. And for the most part, it comes from the guru. And that's why the bhaktas always honor their guru, because they feel that the guru gives them the bija, the seed, the samskara, that first samskara of attraction. Obviously it's not full-blown love. It's just in the beginning, it's just a little curiosity. It's just like, well, who is this Krishna? It's intriguing. And it comes from the outside. Now, in some instances, it could be Ishvara. Now, the next question is, how do you meet, by what forces, right? It's not karma, but what forces do you meet the Satguru? There's no answer to that. If you say, well, I did something in the past life, well, then you just put the problem back into the past life. So therefore, at some point there, you're going to run into causeless grace, causeless mercy with no cause, because you're going to run into a stop sign. You're going to have to run into that, if you keep saying, well, it was because of this, then why that? Well, because of this previous thing, well, why that? Previous thing again, and then you just go on, you get into a regressus ad infinitum. So grace, and there's nothing else that could be said. That's not a philosophical answer, that's a theological answer.
Well said. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Questions, my friends?
Hi, Edwin.
Yeah. Is that Adesh?
Yes, that's me.
So
my question. Good evening.
Good evening.
My question to you was, in the Advaita Vedanta traditions, monasticism is given a lot of importance. Like Shankaracharya, who established Advaita Vedanta, went ahead and established many schools of monasticism, and there's a great emphasis on that. And Patanjali by naturally is very secluded in its
own way. It's the yama, brahmachari,
Yeah. So what is the take on monasticism or sort of brahmachari or that sort of thing in the bhakti tradition?
Well, Rūpa, they're all Goswamis. So Rūpa is a Goswami, but there's less emphasis. The emphasis is to do your dharma, and so some of them are sannyasis. Just like Advaitins, right? There's monastic communities, and then there's householders through Advaitins. So in this tradition, there are Babajis, there are renunciates, not so much monasteries, not in this time, in the 16th century, but they were renunciates, they're Babajis, and they renounced the celibate, so they're not living in a monastery, because Shankara did establish the mutts, but actually before that, there weren't monasteries, only the Buddhists had monasteries. So before Shankara established the 4 mutts in Badrikashram and, the 4 mutts, so that was a little bit of an innovation within the Vedic traditions. But anyway, this tradition has both. It has householders and it has, and it has the renunciates, but less until the 20th century. Now, in the 20th century, you had the Gauḍīya Math to counter the missionaries in Calcutta, and then you had a missionary kind of institutions was founded by Gauḍīya Math, Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati, and he appropriated a lot of the missionary tactics of printing presses and distributing literature and going out in the streets and proselytizing, which is kind of unusual in Hinduism. And then an offshoot of that is the Hare Krishna movement, which also had, ashrams and monastic traditions and sannyasis and book publication. And so that was very much a product of the 20th century kind of colonial Bengal. But this tradition is many renunciates, and they're called Babajis for the most part, but also many householders. So you don't have to be monastic. You can be a great bhakta and be a householder. To be a great bhakta means pure, that everything you do, so your household, your family, everything is engaged and offered in the service of Bhagavan. If you can do that as a householder, if you have a partner that's on the same path as that, and obviously your kids will grow up in that milieu, then that's fine. But then, of course, there are all the complications of household life. You've got bills to pay, and you've got kids to worry about, as schools and all of that. So typically people enter the householder life because they have a desire, whether it's for company or sexual desire. Let's face it, if you had no desire, why would you enter the household life? You would see all people equally. Why would you need to limit yourself to one person? So obviously people enter the householder life because of desires, but once there, they can become wonderful bhaktas and great, and the stories of the great bhaktas, some of them were certainly married. Many of them were renunciates. In the Bhagavata Purana, most of them are sannyasis, not sannyasis, but they're babas or ascetics, most of them, but there are examples of householders.
Yeah, that answers my question. Thank you.
Edwin?
Yes. Yeah.
So isn't, in terms of the different traditions, the Bhakti movement that we're referring to today, isn't it more of a modern Western phenomenon, not as large in India? Is that true?
I'm sorry, the Bhakti phenomenon that we see today, Bhakti is Hinduism. Okay. Bhakti is Hinduism. In other words, if you go to India, what do you see? Temples everywhere. And, and that's Bhakti. Now, there are some jñāna strongholds, in Varanasi and in, the centers of learning of the Advaita, the Advaita lineages. But even they are heavy into Bhakti. Even the Jnanis in the Advaita lineage, of course, for them, Bhakti is only a method. It's not the goal. Right. It's only a method. It's useful, because ultimately in Advaita, the world dissolves. There is no creation, therefore there's no creator, therefore ultimately there's no Bhagavan, and therefore there's no Bhakti. But still, to get to that point, they still do Bhakti. You go to South India to the to the Sringeri Math. They're ringing bells and doing puja from morning till night. So bhakti very much is, except for real heavy-duty jñānis. There are some heavy-duty kind of like, which stick their nose up at bhakti because they think it's all Maya and it's all kind of emotional. And you'll get some of that attitude in certain, but otherwise, the vast majority of that which goes under the name of Hindu religion is bhakti. Whether it's Shaiva or it's Shakta or it's Vaishnava. I mean, you've been to India, right? So you just, what do? You everywhere, there's temples and shrines everywhere. There's village level, little Hanumans under a tree. I mean, it's that bhakti, Hinduism is bhakti. Yeah.
Yeah. Edwin.
Yes, sir.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm reading quite a bit the last several months, your Yoga Sutras, Patanjali, and I see that 123 is, or Va, you mentioned this very much. Devotion, the state of samadhi or sattva is attainable from devotion to the Lord. Why, sort of a rhetorical question, why did Patanjali spend the entire way of teaching what he means by devotion to the Lord versus spend so much time on all the states of samadhi and being quiet and practice and dispassion, which you said is both important for both, whatever you do, practice and dispassion is important for both. Why didn't he devote his whole book to how do we devote ourselves to Ishvara?
Well, because I don't have an answer to that. I can give you my thoughts on it because I've thought a lot about it. I think he's a class, he's definitely a bhakta. He gives Ishvara first on the list of all of the other things that you can fix your mind on, right? There's 6 things he mentions with the va. There's 6 vas. Va means or. Now, in Indian systems, the first item on the list is the most important. Notice, so Ishvara comes first, and there's, 5 or 6 verses to Ishvara. The other things just have a couple of words each. So I see him as definitely an Ishvara, definitely is theistic, but the kind of theism which is accepts that there's an Ishvara, but nonetheless is seeking the Atman as the final goal of practice rather than any kind of love of God. Now, why? I don't have an answer for why. No, who can answer that? We can't climb into Patanjali's mind. I mean, I find him tantalizing, but at the end of the day, he's very clear about what his goal is. It's Svarupa Vastanam. It's consciousness absorbed in its own nature.
It's an odd, just my comment is it's an oddity that a man who is basically a bhakti would spend so much of his time on more technical stuff or practice of yoga. It's so glaringly incongruent, which I'm glad he wrote the sutras. I'm very glad you helped me understand them. But it's just so odd that he would. It's like a Christian spending time on other religions and not his or her own.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we'd have to say that for him the goal is the Atman. So he's not really a bhakta in the way that our text we're reading in this workshop is understanding bhakti. So his bhakti is very, very mediated by approaching Ishvara for something. And we're just reading those verses that he's approaching God for liberation from suffering, not out of love of God. So I don't know if I would call him, I don't know if he's a bhakta, and Vyas says he's a bhakta, but not the kind of bhakta that the Bhaktirasāmṛtasindhu is going to be teaching us. But it's odd. I agree with that. It's incongruous, and I've always been very dissatisfied myself. I totally agree with you. Very dissatisfied by the sort of tantalizing presence of Ishvara. It's underdeveloped, the totally underdeveloped presentation of Ishvara in the Yoga Sutras. Absolutely. Thank you.
I have a question along those lines too, but in some way it kind of seems to me those other practices that he's talking about, that Carl is referencing, it's kind of like, for me, those things lead me to bhakti. Verse 117, the Vitarka, Vichara, and Ananda, Asmita, like and even the 8 limbs, it's just a lot of it does accumulate in this ability to have a relationship with self that is pure enough to have a relationship with God. Maybe that's my thought.
I think that's beautiful, and you have a bhakta's heart, and so that you see it that way. But remember, that's Patanjali's goal is stated in the 3rd sutra, and that is Sva-Rupa Vastanam. Nothing about love of God, nothing about relationship with God. So it's great that you see it that way. In other words, you know, same with me. I appropriate Patanjali in ways that nourish my bhakti. For me, Patanjali taught me how to do japa, how to fix my mind on the name. It gave me a very clear understanding of the kleshas of my own mind, of the obstacles. It gave me that sort of thing. But I have no interest in Sarupa Vastanam, other than maybe a passing moment. But you're right. So if that's what he does for you, that's beautiful. So you're taking Patanjali and you're using him to purify your Atman so that it can be pure to offer to God, and that's beautiful. But that's not what Patanjali himself is teaching. There's nothing in Patanjali that says if you do this, you'll purify your Atman and then you can offer it to God. What he says, if you chitta vritti nirodha tada, then what happens? Svarupa vastanam. You will have the seer will abide in its own nature. That's the goal he's offering. Now that you can take his process and tweak it and redirect it to Bhagavan is a beautiful thing. And that's what bhaktas do. They take everything and they redirect it to Bhagavan. But as long as we're clear that that's not what Patanjali himself is teaching, then that's a beautiful thing that you're sharing. A bhakta is always going to see everything. A bhakta is always going to see everything in terms of its value to offer to God. Rhonda, and you have a bhakta's heart, so you can't help thinking that way. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Questions, my friend? Yep.
I still can't find Lakshmi.
He's not there. All right. He was there this morning. He was all excited, and we worked it out. He was going to do, kirtan for 4 of our sessions, and then Cece was going. I emailed her. Okay. Well, we'll take another question, and then we'll meet next week. If there is another question, is
he stuck in a blizzard?
He's down in Florida. I doubt it.
I'll give it a try.
Okay, my friends, I hope this is what you were expecting, or if it wasn't what you're expecting, I hope you're intrigued enough to see where the journey ends. Jai Sri Radhe Shyam. Everybody see Radhe Shyam.
Oh.
We'll see you next Friday. I'm not sending out any more reminders.
Thank you.
Yeah, and don't forget to remind me to hit the record button. It's all of everybody's dharma, please, because there's folks that want to download it, and I'm absent-minded. I've got white hair. Come on. All right. Jai Sri Radhe.
Thank you.